Imagine being able to communicate clearly, provide comfort, and create joyous moments for your loved one with dementia. In today's video, we discuss caregiving life hacks that will transform the way that you approach moderate dementia and make each day more meaningful and rewarding. Stay tuned because with each section we'll discuss ideas, and at the end of each section I'll give you my best caregiving tip or hack. So let's start improving your dementia caregiving journey together. We've been coping with mild memory problems, but the system worked. Thought it was going fine, but suddenly it's not. His provider just reported him to the DMV and told him not to drive. He's missing medications, and we're both overwhelmed by the stack of mail he's supposed to go through, but somehow just can't. I'm thinking of hiring a caregiver, and his response? A caregiver, for Pete's sake, to babysit me when you're not home? If this scenario sounds familiar, then this video is for you. In my previous video, I outlined 8 different scenarios in mild dementia and how to handle them effectively. In the second stage, moderate dementia, things just get trickier. At the end of each scenario, I'll give you my best hack or tip on what to do when the other things aren't working. Scenario number 1. It's hard or almost impossible for people to take medications independently. Here's what to do. The previous system that you had just isn't working anymore. Your loved one can't organize and remember the steps to do it correctly. The pills now must be ordered, organized, and the pill box filled by someone else. This might be a reliable and organized family member or friend, or a paid caregiver. In terms of remembering to take the medications once the pill box is filled, there are several things you can do. Continue to use routine or regular events in your day to cue taking medications, like right when you're eating breakfast or right when you're going to bed. Reminders on a phone just usually don't work at this point. Your loved one isn't remembering to turn them on, isn't attending to them when they go off, and isn't remembering to act on it right away when they do hear the alarms. If you haven't already, you may try one of the electronic pill organizers that has a built-in alarm. This way, the alarm is attached to the actual medication. When the medication is due, the alarm goes off, the person finally goes over and figures out what it is, and they need to take it before it will stop. I've listed several in the description below for you to look at. If you do decide to use one of those, it will require repeat training, observation, and troubleshooting. If those steps don't work, you will need human supervision to take medications. This might be a loving and trusted family member or friend, or a paid caregiver. Now here's the hack. If a person just isn't available to give your loved one medications, and you don't have any of these options that seem to work so they take their medications reliably, you can talk to a person's prescribing provider. You want to talk to them about how to minimize the negative effects of taking medications inconsistently or incorrectly. The provider might suggest removing some medications completely or changing the timing or the dosing or the type of medications. This could help to optimize chances of success of taking them correctly, but could also minimize problems when there are mistakes. Scenario number 2. The person is no longer able to manage finances independently. They may need help making sure that bills are paid, that mail is sorted appropriately, and that overall financial decisions are sound. And here's what to do. First, emphasize the idea that there's a need to collaborate more to make sure that money matters are handled well. It's not that you're taking over financial management, but that you're working together to make sure it goes smoothly. Now, clearly categorize the financial needs so it doesn't feel so overwhelming. There could be categories like bill paying, budgeting, managing investments, or taxes. Next, gather any important documents and make sure that you have them organized and kept in a safe place. They might include things like bank statements, mortgage or rental information, insurance documents, tax information, and any power of attorney forms. Speaking of power of attorney, let's make sure you establish one. If this isn't already in place, you need to help your loved one designate someone they trust as their financial power of attorney. That will give this person the legal authority to make financial decisions on their behalf. Now, you want to automate most bill payments. Set up automatic payments so you reduce the chance of missing or confusing things like the mortgage or utilities and so on. This also helps to maintain a good credit score. If you don't live with your loved one, consider having mail sent to a place where someone can receive it and sort it appropriately. If it goes to your loved one's residence and they're by themselves, they may lose pieces, respond to things that are junk mail or solicitations, and have other problems managing it. If mail has to be delivered to your loved one directly, have a box where all of the mail goes. Then you can have a designated helper to go through it with your loved one on a regular basis and to organize and designate what's actually important. You might also consider opting for paperless notifications to reduce the clutter and pieces of mail that people get. You want to make sure that you're keeping a close eye on their accounts to track spending, monitor for anything fraudulent that might be happening, and just to make sure there's enough money in the account to pay expenses. Throughout this process, you want to communicate with your loved one clearly and regularly. You want to keep the person informed about their financial situation and consult with them so that we're respecting and highlighting their decision-making capacity and autonomy. You also want to keep records. Keeping good records of all your transactions and decisions ensures that you're transparent and accountable. This can really help when family members or other people later on question decision-making about finances. So here's the hack. Your loved one may not remember the conversations you have about finances. They can get very distressed and worried. What's happening? Do I have enough money? Who's taking care of things? And this can contribute to paranoia. One way to deal with this is to keep a binder of simple and clear information about their finances. So whenever there's a question, you take the binder and hand it to them, potentially going through it with them several times, always pointing out, here's the state of your affairs, and here's why it makes sense, here's what's happening. The reassurance is really useful for people when they're confused. Scenario number 3. Loved ones can no longer drive safely and they need transportation to get places. Now, this isn't just about finding the transportation. Where we all need to start is the emotional impact of not being able to drive. For most people, this is huge. Discuss and provide a safe space and empathy for feelings of frustration, distress, and loss. In these conversations, do not blame yourself, loved family members, or regular ongoing providers. That only poisons the system of the people who are there to support and love and connect with your loved one. Instead, blame the appropriate external source. There has to be a scapegoat. And don't feel as though you're lying. It's absolutely true that when it comes down to it, it is the state of Oregon or the DMV or whatever organization that you want to blame saying that this person is not safe enough to drive. It is not you. It is not your loved one. It isn't the primary care doctor. We all want you to be able to drive. But somebody external to our loving, caring system is saying it's necessary. If the issue keeps coming up, and keeps distressing your loved one every time it does, consider minimizing cues and reminders of the situation. This might include not having the car sitting around to remind your loved one that it's there. It might include not having the keys lying around to remind your loved one they used to be able to just take them and go whenever they wanted. And it can also mean redirecting your loved one when the topic comes up, trying to steer to more positive topics because you can't change what's happened. You also, in most cases, can't logically reason with people to make them feel better. There's often an endless loop and cycle of perseveration and distress. What you can do is explore alternative options. Research what kind of things are available to your loved one in your situation. At the moderate stage, public transportation may not be workable or safe enough for your loved one. It may be too difficult to figure out bus schedules or transit organization and where to be and how to get there and what to do. If that still is available to your loved one, excellent. Explore it with them. One option are considered to be paratransit services. Basically, it's just specialized services for transportation that are designed for seniors or other people who aren't able to take regular public transportation. This is often provided by governments or local nonprofit organizations. You can also look into taxis or rideshare options, Lyft or Uber. There's all these different organizations that are available and can be coordinated with your loved one. It may be too difficult for them to download the app and utilize it on their own, but oftentimes there are mechanisms where other people can order the ride and ensure that it goes well. There are also specialized services. They're in specific areas of the country, and I will put some links below for things that you might be able to find in your area, where it's a specific service where you sign up your loved one and then they make it more convenient and potentially safer for your older adult loved one to use. Sometimes there are specific senior transportation options through adult community centers, senior centers, and so on, so talk to them directly and see whether or not they have their own transportation to offer. If your loved one does live in an assisted living facility or senior community, they often have transportation options that are available for use. And then there are family and friends. Arrange for regular rides from reliable and willing people in your circle of loved ones. So now that you've looked at the options, let's make a transportation plan. Let's consider things like cost, accessibility, and convenience. When you have a primary plan, try to have backup options in case the primary one isn't available or fails. Whatever you choose, work with your loved one to become familiar with the options and able to use them. If they aren't able to learn how to use them, this isn't a viable option at the stage they are at. So here's the hack. For most people, as they get older and they can't drive anymore, the worst part is having to ask for a ride. Avoid this by setting up pre-arranged transportation options so that your loved one doesn't have to ask every time, but, when they're gonna go for a walk with Jane always picks them up so that they don't have to worry about it. When they go to their Tai Chi class on Tuesday afternoons, the rideshare bus always comes because it's already scheduled each week. This way they don't have to ask and they don't have to navigate the setup themselves, which at this stage of dementia is often overwhelming and too much. Scenario number 4, grooming and dressing may decline. So the normally well put together and sharp looking person might be disheveled or just not looking their regular self, even when they go into public. Clothing might not be changed on a regular basis, and bathing might not happen as frequently as you'd desire. So here's what to do. First, establish or highlight their regular routine. Create this routine so it includes things like grooming and dressing. This will make it easier for your loved one to remember and follow these essential things that may be forgotten otherwise. Then simplify the tasks. Break each thing down into smaller and more manageable steps. For example, you might lay out clothing in the order that it's supposed to be put on, or you might provide step-by-step instructions for brushing teeth. This seems like too much and it might be embarrassing for people, but at this stage it's often necessary and really useful. Whenever possible, choose easy-to-wear clothing. Opt for clothing that is comfortable, easy to get on and off, and requires minimal fastening or buttons and closures. Clothes with elastic waistbands, Velcro closures, and front zippers can be especially helpful. You can also provide visual clues. Label drawers or containers with either pictures or words that tell the contents of what's inside. You might label things like socks or shirts or toiletries. Start with gentle reminders. Politely remind the person to change their clothes or bathe if necessary. Offer assistance if it's needed, but also at the beginning, respect their autonomy and their independence and privacy. If this isn't working, we can troubleshoot the next steps of support, redirection, and guidance as needed. You also want to monitor skin health. Keep an eye on the person's skin for things like irritation, rashes, or infections, and this is especially important if they aren't bathing as frequently. This is where, as it gets harder, you may really benefit from having professional help. If a person's grooming and dressing habits decline and they're not allowing you to assist, then it may make sense to consult with someone like an occupational therapist, a home health aide, or other trained professional on what to do. Here's a hack. Used clothing, when taken off at night, should disappear magically. It shouldn't be around the next morning for them to put back on. Fresh clothes should be in its place. But here's another hack. We all have to pick our battles. What you wish for in terms of bathing and cleanliness might actually not be completely necessary. If there are more and more battles around this topic, Then consult with your loved one's healthcare professionals to ask what is the minimum necessary bathing and cleanliness that is required to maintain health and safety. Start with that, and then if you can move up from there, wonderful. Scenario number 5. Problems continue until caregivers start to realize they can't leave their loved one home too long unsupervised. They start to feel the stress of a ticking clock as they struggle to get things done for themselves and for their loved ones. Here's what to do. First, utilize technology. Use technology such as video monitoring and medical alert systems. This can help you keep an eye on a loved one while you're away, or for them to have help if something bad did happen. This can provide some level of peace of mind and help you feel more comfortable continuing to leave home. Next, seek support from family and friends. Ask trusted family or friends to stay with your loved one or to help out while you run some errands or go do things that need to be done. Ideally, when you do this, you are specific about your needs and you're open about your situation. You may need to consider respite care. Respite service provide temporary relief when caregivers can't do it all, and they can provide hours or even days of monitoring, supervision, and help for your loved one while you do something that's bigger or just take a break. This might be provided in-home, at some type of specialized care facility, or at adult day programs. You might want to join a support group. Caregivers who come together and share ideas and share resources generally do better. Not only does it help you have practical tips for managing it, but it can also help you feel emotionally supported. So here's the hack. When your loved one is frustrated or angry or resistant about having a caregiver or somebody stay with them while you're away, emphasize that it's not about them and it's not for them. This person is actually for you, because you can't relax when you're gone too long and your loved one is home alone. When you make it your issue and not their issue, it can reduce the stigma that they have so often in being the identified patient and the one with all the problems and the one that needs all of the help. Reconceptualizing it so it's you that needs the help, not them, in some cases can help people feel more empowered to be giving and helpful to you as a loved one and make them feel better about being productive and contributing to the world. Ultimately, you want to get to the point where they understand they're helping you by tolerating the presence of a caregiver. If they keep hating the idea of someone being there, they don't even have to see them. They can be in a different room, the caregiver can do other things, they don't have to hang out the whole time. Scenario 6. Personality changes can appear, where people might become paranoid, aggressive, angry, withdrawn, or some other way that is not consistent with who they were in the past. Or sometimes it just becomes that they were kind of this way in the past, but now it's much more exaggerated or florid. Here's what to do. First, look at their medications. We always want to look for this idea of, is something causing a behavior or personality change? Medication imbalances or inappropriate medications can sometimes cause things like this as a side effect or an interaction. You also want to look to make sure your loved one is taking medications as prescribed. Many times I've seen patients come in where they're prescribed an appropriate medication, but it wasn't being taken correctly. In this same vein, you may want to, pretty early on, seek medical support. We want to understand, is there anything else that might be causing this personality or behavioral change that we can fix, that we can address? Oftentimes there are. Urinary tract infections, other medical imbalances, other problems with the environment might be triggers for problems. If there isn't anything that we can figure out that can fix the problem, then having the medical professional on board can be useful for their tips in managing the issue. Offering emotional support by validating their emotions and letting them have them and express them with you can be really helpful for people. Once you've offered that space for them to have the emotions, it's often helpful to redirect and distract. Shifting their attention to a favorite activity or a hobby or a movie or music can be really helpful in moving them away from their source of distress. A consistent routine plays into this. Having a very predictable and usual routine usually helps to reduce anxiety and helps keeping people's minds from wandering to points of concern. It's important to note that the decline that we see with dementia is often slow and gradual. There's often no set amount of time that people are going to be in each stage, and it's often not clear. There's no clear indicator when they're moving on to the next stage. Just when you've adapted and figured out what to do and how to be supportive in one stage, things change and you have to start all over again. This can make the work of a caregiver feel never-ending and exhausting. I hope that these tips for dealing with moderate dementia have been helpful for you. But I realize it leaves you wanting to know and needing to know what happens as it continues to get worse. That's why I made my next video on what you can do to support your loved one in the severe stages of dementia. I also give ideas for promoting your own survival, well-being, and emotional health during that process. Share these ideas with anybody that might benefit, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.